It's not calling you Josh Frydenberg, it's calling you Dosh Frydenberg.
Under the coalition, taxes for hard-working Australians will always be lower.
You know, I don't hold a hose, mate, and I don't sit in a control room.
They're answers that only can come from Victoria, I'm afraid, because that's not my job.
But I ain't spending any time, though, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person was torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Well, g'day, listeners, and welcome once again to the Two Jacks. It's episode 138 today on the 11th, as we record this, on the 11th of December 2025. Christmas closing in, just a fortnight away. G'day, Jack. Hong Kong Jack, indeed. How are things in Hong Kong today? Not perhaps as Christmassy as it is here.
Well, that's not quite right. The locals do tend to embrace Christmas because it involves shopping.
There you go.
And shopping's our national sport here. So I've got to tell you, the big shopping centres have the most amazing Christmas decorations, or Christmas installations, I suppose you'd call them. They don't often have anything that's immediately connected with Christmas. My personal favourite was a ski field they built in the Landmark building that even had a little ski lift that took people, that took little figures up to the top and they'd come down again.
Fantastic.
So I'm not sure how that relates to Christmas, but they love it all.
Not many nativity scenes. We're not seeing a lot of nativity scenes. No. That's probably not a bad thing. Of course, the Japanese go hell for leather on KFC on Christmas Day, Jack.
They do indeed, and a few other things as well.
And that's why they're so far ahead of us, Jack. Anyway, in Australia, and perhaps even around the world, a very big story. The social media ban for the under-16s implemented yesterday. We're now in day 2. Some rather odd things expressed by Julie Inman-Grant and the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, saying that kids should pick up a musical instrument, go for a bike ride, go to the beach. Albo said, pick up that book that's been sitting on your bookshelf and you've let it go for a while. It reminded me, Jack, that these guys are a different age group. What we're dealing with here is the Gen Alpha. They're the ones missing out, or a section of them. That Gen Alpha group is they're the ones that are being essentially banned from use. Gen Alpha extends beyond the 16 years and a little bit before it. But also that millennials, for the very first time, are the parents, and they're the ones who want this. Gen Alpha, well, they don't vote the way things stand anyway. So the millennials are the ones who've driven this. Now, neither Albo nor Julie Inman-Grant, and I'm being kind here, are millennials. I think she's 51. Albo's well into his 50s. They're not millennials at all. But it's millennials who are driving this, and I still think there's broad support for it. I'm like you, Jack, I'm not convinced that it's the right way to go, but here's some vox popping from the Guardian. Our son can no longer access his apps. This has already had a profound effect. This morning, my son said, "Mum, do you want to do something with me after school today, like putt-putt or something else together?" Normally, he would be consumed with his phone, watching mind-numbing videos. This is a vox pop, so we're going to go. We're going to go across the board. My daughter is 6 and she watches YouTube. She is already displaying signs of body issues, not wanting to eat, wanting to be beautiful. The rabbit hole that is available through algorithms is horrible. Indeed, one of our listeners said that his children awoke yesterday to be terribly disappointed that YouTube had gone. So these things are essentially seem to be working. I saw in a 7:30 report saying that some of these bans weren't implemented, and indeed some of the Guardian's vox popping here indicates that some have been banned, some kids under 16 have been banned and others hadn't been. They're still able to use their Facebook and Insta apps and what have you. It seems like the a number of apps that were perhaps of greater concern have been essentially wiped. But then there's been a big rush on other apps, file sharing apps, chat apps, and things like that. LemonAid is one, and they saw a surge in downloads, might have added to their market capitalisation. Increasingly, the government is talking about not so much harm minimisation anymore. They're talking about cultural change, which is another way of saying social engineering. And this is precisely what this legislation is about, social engineering. And they're indicating that once this group filters through, perhaps from 8 years of age now to them becoming 16, there will be difficulties. There will be unhappy Gen alphas, I should say. But once that's there, that'll become the new normal, and that's where they're coming from. There is, in fact, a High Court action that's been put forward by the Digital Freedom Movement, Jack, and that's the president and lead spokesman for that group is the MLC for the Libertarian Party, John Ruddick. I think they're at least part funding a High Court challenge brought in by two teens. So it seems, it's here to stay. I don't think there's any walking back from it. I know that Albanese just thinks this is an absolute winner and they're just going to proceed.
I love the coverage of it. The lighting up of the Harbour Bridge. The Opera House missed out, but everything else got lit up.
Yeah.
Albo was channeling Premier McGowan. He's decided he's going to be the nation's dad rather than the state's dad.
Yeah.
And says that it's the thing that he's most proud of doing. I'm thinking there must have been something else besides this that you've done that's more worthwhile. Interesting.
It is welfare stuff. I mean, the French legislated but haven't implemented. Legislated before the Commonwealth did, or the Parliament did. So this really is welfare stuff, Jack. A lot of people. I've got a nephew who's 16, and I haven't yet found out if he's been punted or not. I did make an inquiry.
But Beyond Blue, Headspace, ReachOut, and the Black Dog Institute, put out a joint statement,
all been hit up,
raising their concern of cutting people off from accessing mental health support, and they say it would not make young people safer. So there's a bit to play out with this, I think.
Oh, there's a lot to play out. And the world really is watching. The point I was going to make, Jack, was that the Danes, the Spanish, there are a number of other European countries who are looking at this closely, are getting to the point of legislating, and they're looking at 15 rather than 16. And to be honest, while I'm not a big supporter of this ban, I would have thought 15 was better than 16. I think at 16 you're able to process a fair bit. But the point you're making, and some of our youth mental health agencies are making, Jack, is that there are one of the benefits of social media is that it allows people who may be suffering from a particular physical or mental illness to engage with others experiencing the same sorts of things, and there's a sort of shared sense of struggle and how they go about it, and these things will be lost to a sort of generation of kids from now on. We all understand the internet can be a terrible place. One of the arguments is that the kids will go onto the black web and things like that. I'm not entirely convinced about that, but there is a sense that the people young people who needed that sense of that sort of collegiate sense that they're experiencing something not on their own, but through social media's global reach, they are allowed to communicate with others who are going through similar experiences, and that is a shame. That is one of the great losses to this.
Well, the web is the internet is terrific in about some things and bad about others. That's universal, no matter how old you are.
Yeah. We'll see how this goes. Certainly, the world is watching very carefully because it is one of these things that parents really do broadly support. We are hearing at the same time, we are hearing as many as a third of parents, excuse me, will allow, not that it's legitimate, it's still banned, but a number of, or about a third of parents will enable their children to remain logged into social media by one way or another.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I just think perhaps the better way with this, Jack, is to have parents, and we're not just talking about individual conversations around the kitchen table, but to get together in some sort of forum, Jack, and discuss just exactly how bad this place can be for kids.
It is important to note that the support, the 80-odd% support for this is for something being done about social media for under 16s. It's not specific support for the specific thing that they're doing because that hasn't been known until recently. Right?
Yeah. I think their support for this will decline, but I think it will remain fairly strong. I think that they really are onto a winner. And it's important to remember that it is millennials who essentially left, the majority of whom are left of centre, are supportive of this. We can talk about parents having conversations with their kids, but that's not as easy. Not as easy. That what I was really talking about was some sort of nationwide sort of forum where these conversations could take place, and it might be a preferred option to a ban. But we are perhaps 36 hours in.
Perhaps they could have a nationwide kitchen table with our national dad elbow at the head of the table.
Well, it's not such a bad idea. I mean, but look, critics. There'll be critics of the ban, but there would have been critics of that sort of approach too, saying it's patronising and it's not doing enough and all this sort of stuff. Australia is first into this. And it will be very, very interesting. It is. I heard Sarah from 7:30 last night. Sarah
Ferguson.
Ferguson. I was going to say Henderson. Sarah Ferguson talking about it as a social experiment, and it is. It's a social experiment that we're going through at the moment, and we haven't got the results in yet. And I think that's kind of where we are. All right, moving on. There was a state funeral for Richo.
Yes, it was.
Gee whiz, he's lived large off the public purse throughout his life, and in death he's done the same thing. Matt Canavan was glowing of Richo. He said, "I cannot think of Richo getting a single political prediction wrong. He had an uncanny ability to judge the mood of the average Australian." I presume Matt and Richo got to know each other on Sky News.
Before that as well, I think that was to me that was the thing that stood out. Graham Richards was an excellent organiser and a political head kicker as good as anyone. But he same thing. I used to follow anything he said or wrote and have a look at it, have a good think about it, because there were things he got wrong, but not many. I mean, he was very good at having his finger on the pulse.
Look, he was very, very good as an electoral analyst too. He knew each electorate like the back of his hand, and all of that. Any bouquets at the state funeral from Balmain Welding, Jack?
No, I don't think so.
Just so our listeners are tuned into this, I think Richo teed up a job at Balmain Welding for his first wife. And Balmain Welding, well, the principal there was none other than Stan Smith, who was, in my estimates, probably the most successful organised criminal in Australian history. So there was a dark side too, Jack.
Oh, yes.
But
we have a long history of people in politics in Australia having a dark side, a dodgy side, and he's gone.
Yeah, it was nothing murkier than the New South Wales Labor Right, Jack. And their mortal enemies were your old buddies, actually, and the socialist left, and they played hardball to keep them at bay.
They did.
But there was Elbow from the left delivering a eulogy to Elbow at the state funeral. Paul Brereton, we've followed this. He's the commissioner of the National Anti-Corruption Commission, the NACC, and we've been discussing for a little while now that he poses at least overtly a conflict of interest, Jack, due to the work that he's done as a consultant for the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force. And today, Paul Brereton has he has released an update essentially released under Freedom of Information laws that showed Mr. Brereton updated his official disclosure to Attorney General Michelle Rowland on October 22 of this year, not so far away, not so long ago. That update, according to the ABC, came 12 days after the ABC revealed he had been granted an age extension to remain in the Army Reserves beyond the mandatory retirement age in order to provide, quote, critical capability to the Afghanistan War Crimes Inquiry. In an updated declaration, Mr. Brereton wrote, I also have an affiliation with some units or agencies and the Inspector General of the ADF, to whom I continue from time to time on an informal and voluntary basis to provide advice and respond to requests for information relating to the Afghanistan Inquiry Report. We don't really know where that is, by the way. That's sort of sitting in a dark place somewhere in Canberra. So these are declarations that he has since made. Will this save him, Jack?
No, I don't think it does.
I don't think he can sit on any matter that relates even vaguely to the Department of Defence or the ADF.
No, and it may well be that he's essential to the Inspector General's inquiries about this, that there is nobody else who can do that. And if that's true, then appointing him to the Corruption Commission seems to me to be an error. It's one job or the other.
And given the sort of controversial nature of things like DOD's acquisitions, we're talking about weapons acquisitions and things like that, things that should be examined by a National Anti-Corruption Commission, there doesn't seem to be any way he should be involved in that. And there may be other matters that he would have to sit out, Jack, or should sit out. And then you wonder why he's there in the first place.
Yeah. Does that mean you effectively have two or three commissioners and he just does part of the job? Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's an untidy solution.
It most certainly is, and it may be where we're heading. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep you informed. The NACC, besides this kerfuffle about the Commissioner's potential conflicts of interest, really, if you blinked, you'd miss that they were actually in Canberra, Jack, doing work. Because it seems to operate very, very quietly in the shadows, and we haven't seen any. So no perp walks, nothing, the stuff that the journalists enjoy, nothing like that at all.
Well, that's a good thing in my view. I think the whole perp work thing in New South Wales is
just missing the fun, mate. You're missing the fun. The rictus, as the accused walks through the media huddle. It's just something that we all look forward to seeing. Huge news here in some polling in Victoria. Now, this is just voting intentions for the 18 to 34s. So the younger brigade, you would expect that to veer left a little bit. and it is to a degree, but it shows Labor's vote amongst that cohort down 11 points to 28%, LNP 37 up 17.
That's over a month, by the way.
Yeah, Greens 20%. So this is essentially since, and I think it actually predates the shift after Jess Wilson was elected opposition leader unopposed. So it predates that. So you've got this younger cohort who are turning towards the LNP. The Greens voters are 20%, but that's unchanged. And a big shock for Labor. Look, we've been saying for a while on this program that the Victorian Labor government is at the absolute death's door in terms of its political life. What can they do, Jack? And when I was thinking about this, do they move Alan aside? The trouble they've got with that, Jack, is there's not too many others with the profile to become leaders.
They mightn't have enough dynamite to blast her out. This was it was a month ago that Kos Samaras, who's I think a pretty good polling analyst, said that the problem the Victorian Liberal Party had was that their problem with the 18 to 34-year-olds, that they were so far behind on those and no way of getting up. Now, a 17% swing, I can't remember a swing like that ever really in a month. And I suppose it could be an error, or it could just be that the Victorians have been searching for any kind of credible alternative, and having seen at least a ostensibly credible alternative are abandoning Labor in droves. That's very hard to turn around once it starts to happen. You get a kind of a preference cascade. I think it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. It gathers its own momentum.
Yes, look, overall, so we're going to moving into all ages, all voting ages. The numbers are around 52-48, the Liberals' way. One thing Cos did say about a month ago is that it's, and Labor were in front 52-48 at the time, that the numbers are Melbourne 54-46. So he adds another 2% on to support for Labor in Melbourne. But right now, the Libs are in front across the board, and we could well be seeing the state Labor government in Victoria on a bit of a death march.
This is what happens when they run out of road, when they get to the end of their useful life.
Yeah.
You and I have seen it happen to Labor governments in Victoria before.
You run out of options. You just don't have any options that are viable. Yeah. And look, maybe they're not there at this point. There's still a year to go, or 11 months to go before the next election in Victoria. Maybe there are ways out, but I think the traditional one of shifting on leaders, I just don't see that will work, but we'll see. Green energy export, a former Treasury official, has raised doubts about the department's modelling, that's Treasury modelling, on net zero targets, which claim green exports would exceed fossil fuel exports within 7 years. So what we talk about with green exports, Jack, is essentially, I don't know why they're considered necessarily green, by the way, because it's rather intense carbonisation, getting them out of the ground. And then shipping them off to the world. So.
It's digging stuff up and shipping it overseas, which is what we always do. I just never thought it was green, right?
But this is green, considered green, because it's the rare earth minerals, which are going to surpass with the requirements of batteries and things like that. Is going to surpass. The Treasury modelling at least says within 8 years will surpass our iron and coal exports. Well, they're talking really about coal, aren't they? Not so much iron.
Coal and gas.
Coal and gas. So the Treasury modelling, this is Mr. Yeaman, who now is the Chief Economist of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, said a key risk of the government's emissions projections was that global demand for coal and liquefied natural gas holds up better than expected. He said the Treasury modelling assumes a steep fall of 47% in Australia coal mine output and 27% in gas. This was based on an earlier IEA, that's the International Energy Agency, predictions that global demand for coal and gas would fall. However, most recent IEA analysis tells a different story. He goes on to say that global coal demand has remained strong, and the IEA now projects it will stay at relatively high levels over at least the next few years. So we're talking about modelling being challenged by an actuality that Australia's coal exports continue more or less at pace.
There doesn't seem to be any real reduction in the use of coal and gas in the areas that Australia exports to. There's considerable growth in renewables, but there's really big growth in the demand for power, and that renewables are just about keeping up with the increase in demand for power, but they're not eating into the base level of the other demand.
Yeah, look, there will be a decline in demand in coal at some point. That really just has to happen. The more and more renewables enter into global markets, but we are dealing essentially with a developing world too, many of whom have made decisions based on coal-fired electricity generation.
Well, if you look at our neighbours, China, India, Indonesia, I suppose, coal's still providing 50% in China, 70% in India, and 60% in Indonesia. Now that will change, but it's got a long way to go before the demand for coal disappears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right, yes. We might see some remodelling going on within the Treasury based on the continued support
as we should
of coal.
As we should see remodelling. Right. But this is how it's supposed to work, right?
Yeah, modelling is a sort of peer into the future, but it's not necessarily transparent.
And indeed, even AMIO, the government body, says that coal will be used in Australia till 2049. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm not entirely sure when we're talking about which coal-fired power station would still be running in 2049, because there won't be any new ones built.
No, they don't say, but that's what they think. At least until 2049, it will still be running.
Yeah, but when you look at all that, they just don't have that life. So that's an interesting little gap, isn't it? All right, I hate these things, and we're going to talk about them. There's a 30-year suppression order. Government lawyers have secured an extraordinary 30-year suppression order burying evidence behind Tanya Pliberzek's decision to block a $1 billion coal mine until 2055. How do they get away with that, Jack?
You convince a judge to give you the order.
This happens so often, and we're not just talking about environmental issues and challenges to ministerial powers in terms of blocking development of one mine or another. This happens across the board in a lot of criminal matters, Jack. We're almost on thin ice here, but there's a matter now in Victoria where the son or one of the sons of a prominent Australian family, and you and I have briefly discussed this, the son has been convicted of sexual assault, including penetrative rape, and has basically gone away in advance of sentencing. I believe the bail was not extended.
Bail was refused, was it?
I'm just checking with you. So that was my understanding, that he embraced his parents in the courtroom and then wandered off. Now, whether there's been another bail application, I don't know, but that's really just to one side. But he has been convicted, and the suppression order remains in place.
Yes.
And it was, in fact, essentially that was emphasised by the judge at the point of conviction. So I'm just not understanding this. And there is certainly, when you look at reports on this and people commenting or going into Reddit and having a look at it, there is this sense that if you are wealthy enough, you can afford these things and everybody else can go to buggery.
Well, they're not easy applications to get up. That's who we said. So you're going to need a good lawyer to get an application like that up. And I kind of wonder how effective some of this stuff is. I mean, you know, I asked you if you'd heard any gossip, and you said, well, a little bit of gossip. And 10 minutes later, I didn't have a name, but I had the family name, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's out there. I mean, these days,
it's not
the internet
confirmed, is it? So
No.
there is.
So that's even
with
worse.
these suppression orders, there is this potential for a lot of gossip and rumour that can be misdirected.
Yeah.
So I find them absolutely dangerous. In New South Wales, we had a walloper who was working undercover, blind, and drove into the, I think the Harbour Tunnel, might have been the Lane Cove Tunnel, did a runner, and then he was brought before the courts. That conviction, brought before the courts for various driving offences, including driving drunk, and that conviction was the announcement of his identity was suppressed for 55 years, Jack. What on earth is going on here? Why are judges agreeing to these things?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was
Victoria's the worst. Victoria's the worst.
Victoria has about 5 times the number of suppression orders as the rest of the country put together, I think. There was a long suppression order on the Lionel Murphy Senate inquiry, I think, on evidence to do with that many years ago. I don't know whether that's expired.
You go back to Melbourne's Gangland Wars.
Yeah.
And let's get it out there. Victor Brincat, he's still suppressed. We've just breached a Supreme Court order here, Jack.
Okay. Right.
Victor Brincat, who's known as the runner in reports, he was the shooter at the Auskick event where Pasquale Barbaro and
when they were sitting in the van at the Auskick.
And Jason Moran was shot dead in front of their children.
Yeah.
Or in front of Moran's children. And Victor, he assisted police, assisted the Crown with evidence, and his name, as far as I know, continues to be suppressed. We've just broken that one, Jack, so it's off to jail for you and me. We would be dragged before the courts and told to explain ourselves, mainly me, I suspect, but enough already, it's just ridiculous stuff. Is it done for Victor Brincat's protection? As far as we can tell, Victor Brincat can look after himself reasonably well.
The only thing I can think of with the Melbourne sexual assault case is if it's in some way designed to protect the identity of the complainant.
Of the victim.
Yeah,
That's
of the victim.
not the application, though.
But even so, I think there's a community interest that overrides that. That if someone's going to be convicted of a serious offence like that the community ought to know about.
Yes, indeed. Look, I don't know the identity of that person. You might have an idea, but I think some of the worst elements of this is that we will have a lot of gossip, and
there is a lot of gossip.
People will be labelled and all this sort of stuff. Because
there is a lot of gossip out there, I can tell you. I had a quick look.
Yeah, there's tons of it. I spent 10 or 15 minutes going through various Reddits about this. There is a lot of speculation.
As always, there's a lot of instant experts who are absolutely sure they know, right?
If you create a vacuum, it'll get filled.
Yes.
And that's the part of the problem. All right, Jack, onto a subject that we dearly love. MP's rorts. Now, Annika Wells, she was the first cab off the rank, so to speak, the first Comcar off the rank.
Yeah. She had a shocking interview.
She didn't go well. She hasn't gone well very well. And it is part of the problem is that she is the minister responsible for this social media ban, and she can't really get up in front of a microphone without being asked about her expense claims.
She's Minister for Communications, and she was
sport.
terrible. She was terrible at communications.
Oh,
yeah.
She's, I think Labor consider her to be an emerging talent. Jack, she's, I think, a Brisbane girl, isn't she? And big fan of the Lions. So she's Minister for Sport. And I think there's a certain amount of leniency we give the Minister for Sport, because we expect them, and they indeed should be, at major sporting events around the country. Where it gets a bit thin is this sort of family reunion stuff on the slopes of Thredbo. But Wells has said that it's all above board, and she's actually referred it to an independent, I presume, part of the Department of Finance for their examination.
I think it sits in the Department of Finance, yes.
And then we find out, well, it's just there's this sort of snowball effect because everyone starts looking. Don Farrell, the Special Minister of State, has travelled halfway to the moon, according to the Australian this morning.
He and his family
on family reunion type trips.
Yeah.
And some lovely little parts of Australia that he's taken the wife and kids along to. And of course, Senator Hanson-Young, she's racked up 50 grand's worth of family reunion travel for her husband, Ben Oakquist, who some of our listeners will know is a lobbyist based in Canberra. Of course, Senator Hanson-Young and presumably her husband live in Adelaide.
And that looks an awful lot like the taxpayer is helping fund the lobbying company.
It doesn't look good. No. So that's particularly unpleasant. The Coalition have been murmuring about this. I saw Senator Patterson.
Not very loudly.
Senator Patterson saying that Annika Wells should stand down while the Department of Finance examines her claims. But yes, it's not a din. It's not a big noise coming from the Coalition, because these things are allowed. There's family reunion things that are allowed, and there is, I guess, enormous scope for it to be exploited, I think is the right word.
Yeah, and I've got to say, the life of a federal politician in Australia it isn't all that good in a lot of ways. You're away from home an awful lot, and if we expect the MPs to reflect in some way the kind of nature of the country, then that makes it difficult without some family reunion aspect to it.
Yes, and these things were implemented certainly in the wake of the untimely and very tragic death of a Labor MP, Greg Wilton, who was experiencing dislocation from his family, separation from his wife, and felt utterly bereft and took his own life. And there were outpourings of wonderful speeches on that day across the board. And because all parliamentarians feel this, I guess when we look at the list of some of the big claimants for expenses, a good deal of them come from Western Australia. Obviously, there are significant costs involved in transporting WA MPs to Canberra and back. Must be one of the hardest jobs on the planet, being a Western Australian MP.
Yes,
federal MP.
And there's certainly instances that I can recall. Stephen Smith had a shorter career than he otherwise would have because he was just away too much.
Yeah.
Right? So I've got a great deal of sympathy with this. Even poor old Annika Wells. I mean, the worst thing for her is that she's meant to be the comms expert, and you wouldn't give her a job running the comms at the local footy club, and on that press conference performance. But yeah, I
we live and learn, Jack. She's just 40. She's just a 40-year-old up and comer, and I guess this is her baptism of fire, really.
Yeah,
we'll see how she gets on. By the way, Stephen Smith, the former WA, got deputy leader, did he? Certainly Minister for Defence, etc. Stephen Smith has finished his period. This is the ultimate drinks trolley as Australia's High Commissioner to London. And has just been replaced by Jay Weatherall, former South Australian Premier, Jack. Nice work if you can get it.
It wasn't a drinks trolley for Stephen Smith. It was said that he was a bit stingy with the drinks trolley. He didn't believe in using Australia House to have networking events. It's always been used to host business and other networking events for Australian organisations in London. He thought that was a poor use of the Australian money, which I don't think made him very popular amongst the estates.
I didn't know that side. I did see a little farewell image with Smith there. There were Kathy Lett and a number of other Australian expats living in London farewelling him, and it did look like the drinks trolley was out. But so he's been a little bit parsimonious, but it is the glamour job. You don't want DC, you don't want the UN, you don't even want to be the Consular General for California or Los Angeles, which is the sort of second highest appointment in the United States.
I've got to say the UN job's good because really either the UN or the New York consul jobs are good because there's two of you there. There's not that much to do, and the drinks trolley is flying there.
I still think the job in London is the one everyone courts, Jack. But moving on now, because Barnaby Joyce has not taken an appointment in one of the greatest drinks trolleys in the world. He's actually shifted to One Nation, where he was served a steak and salad from Pauline a week or so ago that she cooked on the toaster. Did you see that?
On the sandwich press.
On the sandwich press. Jesus,
no, not a fan.
That's just ruining good meat. But he has announced that he's going to join One Nation. We don't know. I did see an interview with him. He was particularly combative with Sarah Ferguson, and in a good-humoured way. And what we're not sure about, Jack, is whether he will be on the Senate ticket or whether he runs. It would seem unlikely that he would run in New England, so it seemed probable that he will run as a Senate candidate for One Nation.
Well, I mean, he may win New England if he runs there, but he will.
But there is said to be a fair amount of anger within the electorate that he's sold them short. I mean, it is an electorate known for electing independents from time to time.
Yeah, but the difference is he may win that, but he will win a Senate seat. I think.
I mean, I did see his independent predecessor in New England talk about how this now potentially throws open some national held seats, not just to One Nation, but to independents. And I think that's quite likely. And Kos-Samaras threw up some stats, Jack, that would have the Liberal Party and the National Party a little bit aggrieved or a little bit concerned. Kos writes, the potential for Barnaby Joyce to accelerate defections from the Liberals to One Nation is enormous. According to Resolve poll, 39% of all coalition voters say they'd be more likely to vote One Nation if Joyce were leading it. 39%, Jack. I'd like to see how that question was put because that's a big number. We are now staring at the very real prospect of the coalition following the same long-term electoral decline as their sister party in the UK. Well, we'll get to that too, what's going on with the Tories in the UK, and it's not that bad. There's also no point in the Liberal Party trying to outflank, this is Kos-Samaras again, trying to outflank One Nation on the right. When given the choice, these voters will always go for the real thing over the imitation. Changing leaders may not help either. You need a good jockey, but if the horse is old, it's old. Well, I didn't know Cos was a racing man, Jack, but there you go.
Yes. Barnaby's got he's always had a bit of appeal.
He's always been known as the best retail politician in the country, but I'm not buying that.
No.
He was told
But he
by
has.
his own
He does have
party.
appeal.
Yes, there was a sort of sense that he was a bit of a colourful character and well liked and so forth. But his own party told him to stay in New England and not come out on the belief that they had that he was a net vote loser for in the cities, particularly with women. And yes, I suspect he'll have no trouble getting into the Senate. One thing I'd also sort of speculate on is the long-term career of Pauline Hanson. I think she might be coming towards the end, Jack. Take a sandwich press home with her.
Well, she's held One Nation together for a long time, but she puts a limitation on One Nation that there are a lot of people who won't vote for Pauline Hanson.
Yeah,
who might vote for One Nation.
Mainly the sensible ones, Jack. I did look at her parliamentary attendance record, or Senate attendance record, Jack, and it's the worst of all senators, with the exception of an independent, Zippy Babbitt. Yes, you'd want to have a good look at her expenses as well too. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, One Nation will certainly, on their current polling, they'd be lucky not to get 2 senators in New South Wales and 2 in Queensland. Don't have much of a presence anywhere else. But as one fellow pointed out to me just the other night, the difference in One Nation now, Jack, is that they're actually building branches in New South Wales and Queensland where they didn't have them before. And that's a kind of a sophistication that, is not what you'd associate with Pauline Hanson. So they're going to build on a small army of volunteers, people who can hand out, people who can go door knocking, those sorts of things where they didn't have those things before. One Nation would often suffer, particularly in New South Wales, by not having people present at polling booths. Just didn't have the numbers.
That's been a problem for minority parties for a long time. I can remember the Democrats in Victoria used to have to rely on local Labor Party people organising how to vote card handers out for. But this is back to the Senate, by the way, for Barnaby. It will be. He started at the Senate. Started in the Senate from Queensland.
From the vegetables to the animals and back to the vegetables again.
Yes. Indeed.
All righty. We did say we'd talk about some polling in the UK, and I guess the first thing we'll deal with is if Keir Starmer is considered surplus to requirements within his own party, who might be next? I'm not sure who conducted this poll, but it shows Ed Miliband at 55%, Jack.
Dear, oh dear.
I don't know. I know Shabana Mahmood. I don't know Wes Streeting very well, but he's got 44%. Lucy Powell, 31%. And Shabana Mahmood, 18%. Listeners will note that that's well and truly over 100, but that's essentially what we're dealing with, an approval rating. So I'm not sure that we'd take too much from that. But there is some recent polling. You put up some things from Find Out Now, Jack. There was a YouGov poll published yesterday, and YouGov tends to be a little bit more reliable, and it's something I wanted to talk about last week. So the first thing is the headline. The headline issue is reform support. So the Find Out Now tends to push reforms numbers a bit higher. So the Find Out Now's got them at 31. YouGov's at 26. And there has been a little bit of decline in the reform vote from other polling companies. The YouGov has Conservatives at 18, Greens at 15, Labor at 19, and the Lib Dems at 14. So it's a bad poll. There's no doubt, and it's well within trend for much of this year. But the thing I wanted to highlight, perhaps moving on from reform, and I think maybe they've reached a high water mark. Certainly their polling's been in decline, but between 2 and 5% in the last month. So we'll see how that goes in the new year. But the thing that I'm really focusing on is the Conservatives, Jack. Now the Find Out Now had them at 20, and YouGov at 18. That's a significant improvement on where they were. They were almost in single figures there for a little while, and
They were polling third behind Reform and Labor.
yeah. So they've made a significant recovery. I think a lot of that would be as an expression of frustration with Labor, but an unwillingness to go all the way and join Reform. And there's been a little bit of vote leakage from Labor to the Greens as well. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, Labor at 19 is unelectable.
Yes.
And Reform, whether it's 30 or 26 or whatever it is, they would almost certainly form a parliamentary majority. And when we put the Reform and Conservative vote together, we're getting very, very close to majority.
Yeah. In the Parliament itself, Labor is taking a battering. I mean, not many Britons will be following that very closely, but Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, is flaying Keir Starmer in the front bench. Yeah,
she's been good. That was the point I was trying to make. She has sort of led them out of the wilderness.
Yeah, and that's it's really only important to this extent that it has a great effect on the morale of the troops and the organisation. So the Conservative organisation, the Labor organisation, will have a spring. The Conservatives will have a spring in their step as they go forward, and that makes a difference. Michael Gove, the former Conservative minister, he says it's almost a constituency by constituency roulette wheel the decision-making process. At the moment, that's how it would be if an election were held early in the new year, for instance, because no one's a clear leader in any kind of conventional sense, and we don't really know how reform is going to go. So
it seems odd, isn't it, really, when we're talking about a government that'll be in power for another 4 years? That we're sort of fascinating. That we are fixating on polling, but it does show that there is a good deal going on in the UK in terms of a shift away from the two major parties. I mean, Gove actually makes that point. He talks about the benefits of pluralism and so forth, just the two-party system, but I think that's being dismantled as we speak.
Well, he said that in the European countries. Now, in most of them, you've got a radical left Green Party, a centre-left Social Democratic Party, a centre-right Christian Democrat Party, and a populist right party. Whereas in the heydays in the UK, you had a Labor Party which sort of subsumed most of the Greens and the Social Democrat Party, and the Conservatives picked up most of the other side, right? Which is how it used to work in Australia. I mean, most of in Victoria, most of the Greens are the old socialist left people. Right?
Actually, Barnaby Joyce was asked this question by Sarah Ferguson the other night, and whether the rise of reform held some lessons for One Nation, and he maintained that it did. I'm still not convinced that what we're seeing in polling, and their vote has grown by 10 to 12% in polling since the last election. I'm not convinced that that's anything more than a protest, and it may not be realised. We'll see.
It may not translate into votes, but the most interesting is, as you point out, Kemi Badenoch seems to have lifted the Conservatives off the floor, and at least they got their hands up and looking like they're a competitor.
Yeah, that's really the take-home message so far. All right, moving on to the United States. The US has seized a Venezuelan oil tanker, Jack. Described by, and this was done by the Coast Guard, actually landing on the deck of the tanker and taking it over. Trump seems to think it belongs to the US now. And he did say, as you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large, the largest one ever seized, actually.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it?
So what's it all about? Let me briefly explain, or at least explain the position of the Trump administration through somewhat more coherent Pam Bondi. She said, for multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. Ooh. The vessel had been used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, she said. That's the accusation. All righty.
So did the Coast Guard fella go up to the bridge and say, "I am the captain now"? Like
presumably all that stuff would have gone on. That would have delighted Donald Trump if he was listening in, but he probably wasn't. US. This is a proposal. This isn't law yet, but a proposal by the Trump administration has said that travellers to the US, including Australians, people of the UK, the French, will have to disclose 5 years of their social media history in order to enter the United States or to visit the United States, even though they are covered by a visa waiver program. Gee whiz, they're just intent on just killing their tourism industry, aren't they? The Trump administration. It's just as
I sort
dumb
of
as
wonder
it
how they
gets.
can.
How long would you?
Leaving the legalities aside, just the logistics of doing that would be extraordinary.
Scrolling through your social media on your phone in a dingy office, it's got to be an 8-hour exercise.
5 years worth. It take longer than that.
Well,
I suppose you can run the phone through an AI scanner or something and download the interesting bits quite quickly. But
well, that sort of thing, I suppose. But people are travelling to the United States now with burner phones.
Yes.
So I don't know how that works either, because if you turn up with your burner phone, you've got no Facebook account, you've got no, although they could actually find your actual Facebook account, presumably if you've used your own name, Instagram account, etc., you'll just have essentially a phone with a few apps on it that haven't really been used, and that presumably would create even greater suspicion, Jack. All right. Well, we're going to just look at the SCOTUS now, Jack, who have they haven't handed down anything yet. Be sometime next week, but it will sometime next year, I should say. But this is, I guess, a test of presidential power. Can the president hire and fire at will, or are they the sort of? And we're talking about independent agencies, Jack, or can they not? But it would seem that even the Liberal justices on the SCOTUS believe independent agencies, that presidential power exceeds that of the independent agencies.
Yes, I had a look at the submissions and watched a little bit of the interaction with the judges, and it seems probable to me that the president will have the power to hire and fire at will. This is an interesting question, the creation of independent agencies to do the work of government, of Congress. These were created by Congress. We do it in Australia too. We're quite fond of having independent agencies to do things to try and keep things at arm's length from the political process, I suppose. Ketanji Jackson said, some matters should be handled by non-partisan experts. And this is a kind of a vexed question. I don't think anyone's got a good answer to it, but it will play out in the United States, and I suspect it may play out in other parts of the world, including Australia.
Yes, a decision due sometime next year, Jack. I presume fairly early. I mean, we do know the, shall we say, the conservative to progressive numbers in the SCOTUS. But what surprised me is that some of those progressive justices, the two that are there, are sort of quite supportive of presidential power on the basis that it is driven by election rather than appointment.
Yeah, but my personal view is I think we've got to be careful of taking powers away from the elected people and handing it to experts. I think that should be done with the greatest caution. And that's been, much of administrative law in Australia is the effort to take things away from the minister because of just sheer numbers of things to do and all that kind of stuff. But it should be done with caution, I think.
All right. Well, we're going to move on from there's an LA Times op-ed there that Jack wanted to briefly chat about, but we won't get into that. We might leave that for next week. We're running out of time a little bit. For me, it was a really interesting examination of why opinion is certainly not gospel, and why we need to perhaps look a bit further. We might push that on for next week anyway. Because probably one of the biggest stories of the year is that the national security strategy of the Trump administration has been announced in regard to Europe, and it is basically, it tells the Europeans that they are on the brink of being wiped out culturally anyway due to immigration, and it leaves Europe feeling a little bit alone without the US support, Jack. It really is pointing to a future of Europe without US support at all.
Yes, what it does is it says that you've had the security guarantee of the United States since World War II, but in political and economic terms, you're a competitor. So you want to attack us on those things, but you want us to provide the guarantee, and we're not going to do it. And this battle's been going on for most of the time since World War II. It's just more front and centre.
Not quite as overt, Jack.
No.
And I mean, the presidential rhetoric, and then the stuff from J.D. Vance, and then we've got Rubio as well. There's this sort of open sneering at Europe altogether, and
which makes a change from the open sneering of the Europeans to the Americans, which has been going on for a long time.
I mean, people should be sneering at the Trump administration. I mean, the level of corruption, overt corruption. I mean, they're just unashamed about it. That's going on in that country at the moment is just staggering. I mean, presidential wealth has sort of quadrupled since he became president, and it's really little more than it's less than a year since he was sworn in. Look. At least I think Europe, we've seen some significant changes, major investments in defence from the Polish, the Germans now, Jack, we would have been alarmed of this in the 1930s, but they are now looking at not universal conscription, but a form of conscription. 18-year-old Germans have been told to report to determine whether they are fit for military service. And maybe it's not such a bad thing to have rejected, or for the fair weather ally that the US now is in Europe.
Well, if they want a seat at the table, a real seat at the table, they're going to have some military power.
They're going to have another table. They're going to have their own table. What we're seeing in geopolitically with the Trump administration is the rise of China, almost unstopped, the rise of Russia, almost unchecked, and with the American system in decline. That's essentially what's going on here. The end of empire in the United States, much muted, is occurring right now and is accelerating. They have no capacity to deal with China. None whatsoever. So the answer is, as it often has been in the United States, is a form of isolationism. Alrighty. Well, we will just have a look at this New York Times piece on the Biden administration and immigration. And they just, according to the New York Times at least, Jack, it seems that the Biden administration looked at, what were huge problems for it, particularly around the southern border, and just decided to do nothing.
The New York Times article says they got two big things wrong. They underestimated the scale of the migration that was coming, and they failed to appreciate the political reaction that would occur following this.
Yeah, so this is the month Biden took office, so we're talking January 2021. The US Border Patrol reported 75,000 encounters with migrants along the southwest border. By March, that number passed 169,000, so more than doubled. Many arrivals were children jammed into border stations ill-equipped to hold them, and there was this sort of ongoing chaos. In March of that year, 2021, 40% of Americans said they worried about illegal immigration a great deal. So it's almost like, it's a sort of level of incompetence there. We know Biden was old and weary, but it just seems to me that they overlooked an opportunity to get something right.
Yes, and it's also a failure to understand that open borders becomes not a race issue, but a law and order issue. People don't like it because it's whether it's technically breaking the law or not, it leads to a breakdown in law and order. It's a disrespect. Other migrants don't like it because, generally speaking, they've filled out the forms, done all the stuff to get in properly, and they don't like other people being able to just walk across the river and arrive, right?
Having said that, Europe's found this, and certainly during the Biden administration they have. The response from the Trump administration is the ICE raids, which, if we look at polling, people are unhappy about.
Yes.
The world is becoming smaller and borders are being pushed all the time. Australia is this vast island, and we have Nauru, which we're still using for some fairly unpleasant people who have attempted to become Australians, criminal careers and what have you. But elsewhere in the world, there's just this large number of people moving, understandably, from poverty to opportunity. And I think that's, the Americans have pretty much shut up shop about providing it. But how did it go? The bring us your tide, you're poor, you're hungry. That's now no longer the case. Europe is beset with huge immigration problems around asylum seekers and people just simply wanting to move for opportunity. These problems are not going to go away, and there are no easy solutions for them.
Even the give us your tired, you're poor and hungry stuff had its limitations. Ever get a chance, go to the Ellis Island Museum, one of the best museums I've ever been in, right? Just catch a ferry from Statue of Liberty Park across to there. I think something like 5% of arrivals were sent back. Now that sounds like a small number, but they were sent back at the cost of the ship owners, right? So the ship owners had a vested interest in vetting the people before they got on the ships in Europe to come to the United States. So there was a whole series of process. Just because you turned up didn't automatically mean you got to stay. And nor did a lot of people stay. I think my memory is that of the Greek arrivals, a quarter went back within 5 years.
Mm. Yeah, difficult problems nevertheless. We are talking about a sort of 19th century response here, and the only way across was by ship, and by chartered ship. The people would buy a ticket to get on board, and 95% of those people, from what you're telling me, went on to become American citizens, pretty much.
Well, no, not at all. 95% got through the process on Ellis Island and got to the United States. But like I said, of the Greek cohort, a quarter of them were gone in 5 years.
So they came and went.
They came and went, and most nationalities were much the same. That a lot of people went back. This was a huge number. I think it's 300 million Americans, and a third of them can trace their arrival in the United States to Ellis Island.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary. And, while migration, ice raids, etc., is a sort of front and centre problem, front and centre issue for Americans, I've always found Americans can trace their ancestry a lot quicker, and they have a greater knowledge of it, much more so than Australians do. Certainly, it's Australians of perhaps third, fourth generation that they don't understand all that much about what happened to their great grandparents and what have you. But the Americans do, and I think that forms a part of that problem with the ice raids now is that, oh, hang on, Granddad would have been caught up in this sort of thing. Anyway, we have to move on to sport because there's so much going on. Let's start where the big news is, and that's the Ashes, with Australia two zip up after a solid win by 8 wickets at the Gabba. Not without controversy, the win. Nathan Lyon was left out of the 11. I think he was a pretty unhappy boy for a while, but we did see him.
See the interview?
Hey?
See the interview? Did you see the interview?
Yeah, I know. That wasn't good. That wasn't his best moment, by the way. I can understand his frustrations, but it is a team game, Nathan. He did, to his credit, was the first one to embrace Michael Neser as Neser came off the ground after taking his first 5 in Test cricket. I was unsure, and you're opposed to the line omission. But in the wash-up, what we can see is that the inclusion of Michael Neser with Alex Carey keeping up to the stumps was a lovely piece of thinking. And you and I and cricket punters generally are disadvantaged. I was looking at that Queensland or the Gabba wicket after the first day's play, and it looked like it was going to keep low. It looked like it was going to crack up and become very, very difficult to bat on. But there were some pretty wise heads around Cricket Australia and around the cricket team that noticed that the wicket wasn't going to get that bad, and it would be good just to have Neser there. It wasn't going to turn a whole lot. Although I did see Will Jacks got a bit of turn every now and then. Yeah, and maybe Nathan Lyon would have got a wicket or two. But as it stands, he would have had to take 7 to make Michael Neser's selection look like a bad choice.
I still think it was the wrong choice, but there you go.
Well, Michael Neser, 5 for 42, Jack.
There were
about would have had to beat that.
There were about 3 or 4 hours there at one stage where we would have liked to have thrown the ball to Nathan Lyon.
Yeah, it did limit them. There's no doubt about that. There was a time when Stokes and Will Jacks were batting. They batted for a session and a bit, and it would have been nice to throw a spin on. Though Travis Head had a trundle. I think even Marnus had a trundle. So they were a little bit short on there, but it did work. The figures speak for themselves. A lot of talk about Bazball. I thought the way that Jackson and Stokes batted was entirely what was required, but so few of them have been able to make those adjustments, Jack. Just perhaps not mindful of game awareness, where they are in the game and what they need to do.
Yes. One of the English writers took Bazball to task. He says, if you want to win in Australia, you look at what's won in Australia in the past. And what's won in Australia in the past is keeping the Aussie bowlers in the field all day. Hot day, big ground, hard ground. Alistair Cook showed them how to do it in 2010. India won twice there with Pujara batting and batting and batting. Like you throw in Rahul Dravid. I thought Rahul Dravid was going to bat till Easter in one test in Adelaide. And then you can cash in as the innings goes on when they get tired. And that's true. I don't think any.
Done. I mean, yeah, it's like saying, you're in Test match cricket, you make more runs than the other side. I mean,
yes, but batting long seems to work. I can't see, not since the West Indies has anyone Bazballed Australia on their home soil.
Well, this Bazball is such a sort of recent innovation. It got England Test cricket out of the doldrums and sort of made it exciting to watch them again. And it resurrected a few careers that had been found wanting. Pope was one. Pope was the one who went up to McCullum and said, I want to bat at 3. I want to entertain. I want to put on a show, all that sort of stuff. I can't imagine how he would play in Adelaide, Jack.
No.
Oliver Pope. He looks slightly Pope. Well, you would think he'll be replaced by Bethel. What other changes would they need to make? I can't believe they haven't sent out the SOS to, what's his name, Folks, to keep, because the keeper, he's nowhere. His foot movements are terrible.
Yeah.
And then we compare it to the keeping of Alex Carey, and I'm certainly not the only one. I think it was Smith saying it was the best keeping performance he'd ever seen. I think Haddon said the same thing. Gilchrist was also full of praise for Alex Carey's keeping. It was remarkable, Jack. He really didn't make a mistake, and that's kind of what you want from a keeper. He's keeping up to the stumps to Scott Boland and Michael Neeser. Took a couple of blinders, including one running back where he had to shake off Marnus Labuschagne to make the catch. It really was an extraordinary piece of wicket keeping. And gee whiz, he's 34 now, Alex Carey. I was just thinking about him, and I think he's a future Australian captain. Well, probably his age keeps him out of that, but he certainly does have that, inspirational sense of drive about him. Wonderful cricketer.
Too much to do.
You got
to be
Mitchell Starc, Jack. In his last 4 tests, he's averaging 8 with the ball, and in his last 2 tests, he's averaged 45 with the bat. So perhaps if you take Starc out of there, do you say, well, England might have gone okay? I don't see it that way, because I see them being out-bowled, out-batted, and out-fielded. Their fielding's terrible.
Well, you almost never can win a test match if you drop 5 catches in an inning.
Yeah, and some of them. I mean, you tell me what's going on with the opener, Little Blake, Duckett. Either he wasn't picking up the ball. Kerry O'Keefe announced that he didn't look fit, and I think there might be something in that. So the problems that we always saw with the English side coming here, Jack, was their fast bowlers and how, they had this equation, and they're absolutely right. If you bowl fast and well in Australia, you give yourself a chance. And we looked at their fast bowling, and we knew that Jofra Archer hadn't bowled enough. He just played a lot of white ball cricket. We knew that Wood, I'm just trying to think of his first name, was a really good player, but getting on and hadn't played a lot of cricket himself. He is now no longer available. He is flown home with an injury. And the others just look a bit workmanlike, aren't they? They're not bad bowlers, but they're just workmanlike. And so there was always that vulnerability about the attack that's resurfaced.
The attack looked the best English attack I've seen in Australia in the first innings in Perth. What it doesn't do is they don't come back and bowl a good well on them in the next innings.
Jofra Archer hasn't bowled more than 10 overs in an international game for more than 2 years, Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you would expect those 145s to sort of drop down in intensity. So there's the bowling. So there was the fragility around the fast bowling attack, and then there was the fragility around the top three. And those things are still the problem. So you've got a Root coming in early. You've got the number 5 coming in early, and they're suffering as well. So Root and Stokes have made a few runs. Root obviously got 100 in Gabba. Good on him. He's just been a fantastic servant of English cricket for a very long time, and he's an all-time great. But beyond that, 1, 2, 3, very iffy. The number 5 is not getting runs at this stage. I think he got a 50 in Perth. Stokes has got a few. The sort of vaunted tail is not there. The keeper is in all sorts. So I don't know where they go to, Jack. They maybe just sit on the beach in Noosa and just try and forget about cricket for a while, come back to Adelaide.
There
are significant problems there, but Adelaide will be a road, I mean, we may not even get a result there, but we'll see. But Adelaide will be a good batting wicket. I noticed Australia's announced a squad of 15 that includes Cummins, that includes Usman Khawaja, and some talk of him batting in the middle order, Jack. That would presume that Head continues to open. And I think we got a few bowls. Obviously, Nathan Lyon's been named in that squad too. What should Australia? I mean, I totally agree that Nathan Lyon should be bowling in that attack. So you would seem to think that he will replace Doggett, who bowled out of character, really. I mean, he's a bloke who likes to throw the ball up, let it swing, let it seam, and he was asked to do that horrible job of running in and banging in short stuff. But did a good job, I thought, in a difficult sort of assignment. But he will miss, I would think, and Lyon will replace him. Whether Nisa plays or not, I'm not sure. He certainly got the wickets to include it, but Cummins has to come in, and so that would mean Nisa and Doggett miss. We had Josh Inglis batting at 7. He's a hell of a good cricketer, but do we need a batsman, a specialist batsman batting at 7? Not so sure about that. So who do they go with? I'm concerned about Head opening as a long-term prospect, and I think they need to perhaps steer away from that. Did you see any of the Australia A versus the Lions scores?
No, not at all.
No, Nathan McSweeney got 226 not out. They won by an innings and 127 runs. The Victorian opener, the left-hander, who's a good prospect, got a 70. Nathan McSweeney just dominated the game. So Bethel plays for the Lions. There's nothing there that they could pick besides Bethel, just on ability. There's nothing there that they could pick that's going to trouble the Australians, you wouldn't think. So it comes down to Adelaide. When are we going there? Next Thursday? Next Thursday?
Yes.
And we'll see how they go, what scars they will carry. I think, too, we may not have quite estimated how traumatic the loss in Perth was for them mentally. That was always going to be a tough one to come away from. Moving on. I'll just grab a quick score. Not that too many people worry about these things, but the New Zealanders, the Black Caps, were playing the West Indies in, I think, the second test there. The thing that I was mainly looking at was the great New Zealand number 4. He hasn't got many. Where are we? Yeah, no, he didn't get many. They're 5 for 200, 5 runs behind. 5 runs behind the Windies, who were all bowled out for 205. God, it just made me think.
The West Indies are looking competitive again, I've got to say.
Their batting's terrible, mate. Their batting is really, there's just not a lot of application and not a lot of experience in there.
They made 500 in the last test.
We got 37.
They made 500 in the last test.
Yeah, I know, but if you have a look at the New Zealand bowlers who've knocked them over here, Blair Tickner's got 4 for 32. Michael Ray 3 for 6. That's a second string New Zealand attack. It just made me think. And look, I'm just moving on to cricket. Sydney Sixers play the Perth Scorchers tonight at North Sydney. That is the semi-final. Whoever wins that will play
of the women's
Hobart Hurricanes in the final. And then, of course, we've got the BBL starting on Friday, Jack.
Yeah. That's the women's big bash, and the men's starts
for everyone.
Yeah.
What else? Golf. I'll get you do the golf, mate.
They shifted the Australian Open back to Royal Melbourne, paid a lot of money, I presume, to get Rory McIlroy out here to do that. And it was a
decent appearance money there, couple of mil.
Yeah, and it was a huge success. I think 117,000 came through the gates over the 4 days. Lots of great coverage in media overseas, all that sort of stuff. Paul McNamee, I think, ran the Australian Golf Open for a couple of years after he finished up at the Tennis Open. And he shifted it to Sydney, and he said, in retrospect, I can see now that was a mistake. It should be in Melbourne at Kingston Heath or Royal Melbourne and one of the Sandbelt courses, because the golfers want to come and play there. And I saw a number of interviews with golfers who said, that's what brought me to the tournament, the chance to play in a tournament on one of these great courses. So it goes to Kingston Heath next year. It just might be the shot in the arm that Australia golf needs to come back again.
Yes, and of course Melbourne does have the best golf courses, really, in Australia, and some of the best in the world, Jack.
Well, what did Rory say? Royal Melbourne's definitely top 10 in the world, but it's not the best in Melbourne.
Not the best in Melbourne, and that would be Kingston Heath, Yeah. All right. And the World Cup, that is the FIFA World Cup. Did you see, Jack? They gave the Donald, they gave him a peace medal.
Yes, I saw that.
Did you see that? And he put it on himself. He was wrapped. Thanks very much. FIFA, I think they know how to figure him out.
Yes.
You got to be a little bit careful, because I think there was the North American thing where he ran off with the trophy. But the World Cup is coming, Jack, next year. What time? Do you know? Do you know the month when it starts?
I did see.
I will find out. You have a bit of a
forgotten.
chat.
There was one amusing aspect to the announcement that the good people that the Seattle local government decided they were going to have. They got a match, right? One of the round matches going to be played in Seattle. So they decided that would be a pride match, right? Because they're big on the alphabet community in Seattle. Unfortunately, the two teams who drew the Seattle game are Iran and Egypt. So
not known for their.
It's going to be a little bit tricky to make it.
Yeah, not known for the love of the LGBTQI community. And Paul Foster's, Craig Foster has weighed in on the impending tournament, which starts, I think, on June the 16th. Is it June 16? June 12. The opening ceremony is on June 11 and goes all the way through till almost the end of July. So that will capture the attention of the world. Nothing bigger in sport than a FIFA World Cup, Jack. I think the numbers are even bigger than the Olympic Games, aren't they?
They are. Yep. And indeed, it's a bigger sport than athletics or swimming or anything like that by a long way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is the world sport. There's no doubt about that. And Craig Foster has said perhaps, he's given a bit of a bleat there, Jack. World football should be embarrassed and outraged that the game of the world that everyone plays in all corners of the planet has been used to promote a human rights abuser, currently extrajudicially killing Venezuelans who play our game, locking up immigrants and vilifying all manner of cultures and faiths who play our game, goes on. I presume he means the Donald, but how explain how the Donald gets his medal for being a peacemaker, Jack, from FIFA.
Yeah, well, I just thought the Craig Foster thing was a bit extraordinary, especially as the last two World Cups were in Qatar and Russia, respectively.
Yeah. I actually was watching a bit of nonsense cricket from Abu Dhabi, and it was a look into a future of cricket that you really don't want. But there's Abu Dhabi. There are about 5 major sporting complexes, all built for the World Cup, all sitting together. And essentially unused. And the cricket game that was being played, there were about 12 people in the crowd. And Russia, as you say. So FIFA, I'm not sure that FIFA's got that great a record on, shall we say, human rights.
Terrible record on everything.
Just about everything, about everything. Whether they've improved or not, I could not say. All right, well, that takes us out for episode 138. I want to thank Hong Kong Jack for his work and thoughts throughout the show. We are probably going to do one more because we certainly won't be recording on Christmas Day. So we're going to be doing one more for the year, and that'll be recorded next week on the 18th. And we'll bring all the news to you then. Great to see some responses on X to some of our inquiries, and some of them telling their tales of woe about the social media ban or that of their children. So we'll see about all of that over the next week or so, and we look forward to bringing you the program then. Thanks a lot, listeners. See ya.